Hey everyone, how's it going? We're back with another project today. We're going to be working on the Expedition today. As you can see, I already pulled the wheel off, got it jacked up, and today we're going to be installing these coil spring spacers. Now what it'll do is give me a little bit more ground clearance so I can put some larger tires on it to aid if I have to take it in the dirt or something. So this is what they look like. Now they go on top of the coil spring right there, so there's a few steps we have to do to get it out and put these in. So like I said, I already took the tire off. What I got to do next is support the axle, and basically it says take the shock off and take the sway bar off. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to do that, and then I'll have you guys follow along. Okay, to get started, I'm gonna support the axle. I'm gonna put the floor jack under here so that when I disconnect the shock and whatnot, it doesn't droop. Now, I'm probably supposed to do both sides. I mean, when I've done these, I do both sides at the same time, but the truck is at an angle on the driveway. I have tires in front of the wheels and my header wheel chocks, but I feel better trying it this way one at a time, so at least one tire is on the ground. But if I find out I need to pick up the other side, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But for right now, I'm gonna try it this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the axle. Now what I'm gonna do is take the sway bar off right there and right there. Well, I went ahead and took the other wheel off just to make it easier so that there's no tension on everything. Never hurts to put the tire underneath the running board and the frame right there, so if it were to slip off the jack stands, it'll stop it from completely coming down. I mean, it takes 30 extra seconds and can save your life, so totally good idea to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and go under and jack up the axle and take some of the strain off. Okay, what we're gonna do first is take the sway bar off from the axle. So that'll be this guy and this guy, then the ones on the other side. Now, originally the axle was hanging by the sway bar, but since we took some of the pressure off, it no longer is. So go ahead and take these four off, and I will come back to you. I don't want to bore you with doing this. Now, in the interest of time, I'm using the impact to get this stuff off. Now, before you drop the axle, you got to be mindful of like this breather vent, this sensor, just so that you don't sag the axle and rip stuff apart. Just kind of keep an eye on that and the brake lines. When you're using the impact, it's a good idea to use a 6-point socket. This is a 12-point, and you can see there's a whole lot of little points in here, and this one only has 6. Well, when you're using the impact and it's continually smacking the head of the bolt or the nut, it has a tendency to want to strip it if you're using a 12-point, so 6 points always best. So the sway bar is hanging, and now I have to disconnect the shock switches here and there. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Now this one's loose. Tip I like to use is take the open end and run it out like this so that you don't have to run your fingers on the underside of the bolt head and possibly cut yourself on a metal sliver or something. Okay. So that's down. Now I'm gonna do the other side. Same thing. I don't feel like I need to record it. It's the exact same thing. Just go back and forth, take it out. Okay, both shocks are unbolted, so we're gonna go ahead and lower the axle. Now, what you'll notice is these coil springs have these bags inside them. Previous owner, someone before, had set this thing up to tow pretty heavy because it's got these airbags inside the spring, and it has these special helper springs on the shock. So somebody was towing pretty heavy with this thing. So it's nice to know that it was actually used for towing and not just, you know, being a, as a grocery getter or something. So it means it's done it before and it's going to do it again. So just wanted to show you that. I'm gonna go ahead and slowly drop the axle, and we'll see where we're at. Well, I disconnected the little clip going into the top of the differential so that that wire has more play in it.
we'll slowly go down and see what happens. It's almost all the way down. I'm gonna crawl in there and check.
Alrighty guys, well, I had to do some fancy footwork on this thing. What I ended up having to do was get a floor jack, well, actually the little jack I use for all sorts of stuff around here, to help push the axle down, because the axle just wouldn't droop out. I loosened the shock's gone. I mean, I didn't really want to take these control arms off. I mean, I have the I have this link loose. I have, yeah, everything loose, and it just doesn't want to hang. I checked the drive shaft. That wire is good, so I ended up just using this to push it down a little bit. The other side had to go down a lot, but this side only had to go down a little. So I actually have some wiggle room. On the other side, I'm actually glad I took this apart, because the tube for this airbag on the top was pinched and cracked, so it wasn't gonna do me any good anyway. So I'm gonna get under here and do the same thing, except I have the exhaust pipe in my face. So what I had to do was just get this guy out of the way and try to get some slack with the tube, because there wasn't much. Yeah, I mean, this is all I have right here. So I'm gonna try to get a little bit more. I'm gonna pull back on this one and cut the zip ties holding this, so I can pull this in and actually get some slack. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll come right back. So I have slack now. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pull some of it back. I'm gonna take the whole assembly out, get it out of the way, and bring it down to me. So fortunately, I have to cut the rubber line to make some room for myself. Sorry, I know there's glare. So it's gonna be kind of a pain in the butt. I'm gonna have to cut the line off of this airbag right here and fish the new spacer through, and then put this line back on. Okay, so the line's cut. So I'm gonna pull this spacer off, and I'm gonna cut the end of this guy. Give us a new portion of the tube. Now I'm gonna stick this guy on. And try not to pull it too hard. Then I have to fish. See if I can get a little bit more. Probably not. Let me see if I cut this guy. I'm gonna have to redo all this at some point anyway. Okay, cool. So I have a lot more tube. So I ran it through there. Have to go through this rubber. Then I have to go onto the bag, which is easier said than done because I can't get my hand in here. So just gonna push it on best I can. Okay. Now I'm gonna put this little tang right here, needs to go right here. So make sure that this little stopper is at the end of the spring. You can check by turning it. It should clunk. Right there, that should be the end of it. So I'm gonna put my gloves back on, because yeah, something like this definitely want gloves. Okay, gonna get her back up into position. Oh. Okay, rest it on the sway bar for a second and take up all this extra hose slack. Definitely don't want that getting pinched like the other side. So, got that guy there.
lift it into position. It looks like I'm getting caught, so I'm gonna have to go the other way. I'm gonna have to try to fish it around here. All right, well, I centered it, and I think I'm pinching the line. Just bring it on, and that should be it. Hope I didn't smash it too good. But the line's in, everything's in, so. Okay, we are in. Completely in. So, I'm gonna go ahead and start loosening the jack, and I'll have to line it up, obviously. So do it real slow. And that should be it. So I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the axle, reattach the shocks, reattach the sway bar, and I'll show you that process. All right, so go ahead and start lifting the axle. See if I can get that front shock in. This one's almost there. So I'm gonna keep going up. This one is almost in, just a hair more. I actually think I'm gonna change these things because I have these bags, so I don't really need the shocks with the overload on them. I'd rather have something that performs a little better and gives it a smoother ride. Alrighty. So this guy's in. Now I'm gonna go do the other side and then we'll continue. Okay, got all that stuff back on, so we're gonna do the sway bar now. And pretty self-explanatory, just line everything back up and put the bolts in. Just gonna snug this side because I got to do the other side too. So I'm just gonna drop it in here and all right. Now to do the other side. There's one bolt. The other one go. Okay, got the bolts. I'm gonna need some new bushings on this at some point. Not too far down the road. Maybe buy a nice set of energies when I do the shocks. Want to get it running and on the road first though. So tighten this guy up. And this guy. And plug this in. This is the vent for the axle, so if you go through water, it doesn't fill up. It goes all the way up there, so you'd have to submerge all the way up there too in order to get water in the tube. Make sure that's tight. That's tight. So we're pretty much done. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and tidy up and zip tie this line back out of the way and whatnot. I gotta find a new one of these, so I don't know where I'm gonna find that because it's probably been discontinued, but I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna clean this up, put it back out here, and I'll be back with you when I put the tires back on.
Alrighty, well, the tires are on and it's noticeably higher.
There's quite a big gap there, so it's gonna look good with the new tires on here.
Yesterday we did the coil spring spacers in the back, and as you can see, it's significantly higher. It's almost, the roof's actually close to being level sitting in the driveway. So today we're gonna do the front. So this is a vehicle equipped with torsion bars, so we're gonna get under there and we're gonna twist the keys a little bit, which tighten it up, which in turn will raise the truck. So first order of business, we're gonna measure where we are. Now I want about 2 inches of lift
Not much more, because if you go too much, you'll stress out your stock axles and you can hurt them. Now, from what my understanding is, and the research I've done, is the Expeditions can actually, their axles can tolerate a little bit more of a angle, which you'll get when you lift, versus the F-150, so that's kind of nice. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna measure the top of the tire to the top of the fender well, so that should be the highest part of the tire. So that's about, say 7 and right under 7.5 on that side. And over here, this side's actually a little bit higher. So that's, yeah, it's about a little over 7.5. So we know that it's sitting a tad cockeyed. So I need to take the truck to get it aligned, because it kind of pulls to the right a little bit. But before I do any of that, I want to do this, because once I do this lift, it's going to affect how it sits. So I'm going to go ahead and get the jack and jack it up just enough to get the front tires off the ground, but like as is proper practice, I'm going to put the ghetto wheel chock behind the tire. Now, if you had something that was lifted sitting on like 37s or something, these wheel chocks wouldn't work as well, because the tire could roll right over them. But since this thing has stock tires on it right now, it shouldn't roll over them. But what I'm gonna do is get right under this cross member and jack it up just enough to get the wheels off the ground. Try to center it best I can. Good old goat. Okay, so I'm gonna lock it there. Now I'm gonna crawl under here, get my rag. There it is. Crawl under here and get to the torsion keys, which are right here. So I'm gonna spray it with a little bit of PB first. Let it sit there for a second while I figure out what size it is. Now, I had this put on this past weekend, but they did a crappy job, so it has to go back. I'm not very happy about it. That, and it's sitting against the heat shield, so it's gonna sound great. They weren't very attentive, so I'm pretty pissed off about it, to be honest with you. But they promised they'd make it good, so they're going to. But anyway, that'll be another episode. So not that one, probably be this one. Nope, 18. So now what I'm gonna do is we want to count how many times I spin this wrench, or I'm sorry, this ratchet. So I'm gonna go probably a full turn first, and each turn is a quarter, because you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back, so that's a full turn. So I'm gonna do it in quarters, because I don't want to crawl under and go all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'm gonna crawl over to the other side and do the same thing. Now, different vehicles have different suspension setups. This one happens to have torsion bars. GM, Chevy trucks have this quite commonly. Those are the older ones that have leaf springs, but it's a pretty good way of doing suspensions. There's no springs, it's just a shock up front. These are the springs. These rods twist as you go over the bumps, and that's what gives you your suspension. So I'm gonna crawl over to the other side and I'll come right back. Okay, so we're on the other side and we're gonna do the same thing. Now, did I overshoot and spray on my driveway? Yes. Will it come off? Yes. So, same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is climb out and lower the front, and we're gonna measure. Now I'm looking for 2 inches, so we'll see where we're at. That did a little under an inch. A little under an inch, so we'll go 1 full turn more. Now this is pretty easy to do. You just don't want to max them out. Okay, start over here because we're over here. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now the other side. Wish lifting the back was that easy. Well, certainly is not. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's check it. Now, once you drive down the road and bounce it around a little, the measurement will probably change, but since I did them equally, it should be consistent. So I'm gonna have to most likely buy new shocks to accommodate the different length, but these ones are kind of tired anyway, so I'm okay with that. See where we're at. Still 8.5. This one went right under 9. So, see where we're at. I don't know why this one didn't go up more. Maybe I'll have to do this one another half turn. I'm gonna grab my level. It looks almost level. I mean, this side might maybe go up a hair, but not much. So let me check this on the back. Actually, we'll put it right here in the center, see what it says. Dude, it's almost perfect. Let's check the rear. Yeah, same thing. So what I'm gonna do is drive it around a little bit, then I'll come back and check it. That's the only way to verify, but I showed you how to do a torsion twist. Like I said, very easy to do. Just, I mean, you can do it when the weight's on the tires, but it's easier to do it when it's not. So then let everything flex how it should. So I'm gonna drive around and do it. At some point, put different shocks on here, do the brakes, and then tires are probably next because these things are pretty worn out. So follow along, try to teach you the best I can, and thanks for watching.